Thank you, and shalom. Rabbis sometimes have a reputation for talking about lots of things, so I want to tell you that the story that I'm going to tell you is all built upon the letters S-U-B. It starts with subway, and then it proceeds to submarine, and then it proceeds to subway sandwich, and then it finishes with substitution. So it's all about SUB. And the story is about coming to the South as a Jew, as an observant Jew, as a kosher observant Jew. It's getting harder. True, my father was a rabbi in Jacksonville, Florida for 1 year, and he wasn't able to stay. This is a true story, it's not funny. He tried to be the white guy who's next to Rosa Parks 10 years too soon. He sat on a public bus, choosing to sit next to an African American. The only thing which happened was that the poor fellow had to stand up and go further back. So that's part of my family heritage. I was not looking forward to coming south of the Mason-Dixon line, but Norfolk made an offer I couldn't refuse. Still, I was a New Yorker, and my sense of New York went all the way back to Hebrew high school days. I used to take the number 1 train. Anyone know the number 1 train? This is before they had skip-stop service. Took every stop through Spanish Harlem and so on, with my big brother, Raphael, and his friend Morris. And there was this strap hanger. Do you know what a strap hanger is? Okay. And I'm sure there's a PC way of describing her, but she was huge. And Morris said to my brother Rafi, "Bo na'amod v'nitain la'para hazot lashevet," which means, let's stand up and let this cow sit down. And the lady said, "Ein ha'para rotza lashevet." And I think you know what that means. What it said to me was, don't assume that your battle language is secure in the New York City subway. So I loved New York for that reason. And I wasn't quite sure how I would be able to acclimate. Well, we arrived in July, and the 1st November, on Thanksgiving Eve, one of the congregants who worked with the submarine fleet offered to get me on the base and get me a tour of the USS Oklahoma City. An amazing vessel, an amazing machine, and the people who are on it are just so deserving of our respect. And I'd never been closer than the mothball fleet before. I mean, there's the USS Lynn, which is moored in the Hackensack River, World War II submarine. And for me, that was a submarine, but this, wow. So I get this wonderful tour. On the way out, I notice there's a vessel moored at every possible berth. I've never seen so many naval vessels in my life. And I asked my host, is this routine? He said, no. We got to get the boys home for Thanksgiving, and we got to get them home for Christmas. Very important for morale. Okay, file it away. Come home, and Sheila's my wife, says, "Michael, we need some milk and a few other things. Here's a list, go get it." I didn't yet know my way around Farm Fresh, so I would go up and down every aisle. Otherwise, I would surely get to the checkout and forget the one thing I needed. So when I get to the pharmaceutical aisle, every condom in the store is sold out. Fleet's in. So that was part of my getting acclimated to Norfolk. The next part was at a late-lamented restaurant, and I'm sure half of you have been to. And if it were open, I wouldn't mention it out of respect for our wonderful hosts. But it's closed. So this is Uncle Louie's. Who's been to Uncle Louie's? Okay. So I don't have a lot of success telling people I keep kosher. They don't really know what that means. I've learned there's something called Chesapeake kosher, which means that you eat crab. sorry, but I lie. I tell people I'm vegetarian. Sometimes I tell them I'm highly allergic to shellfish, but usually vegetarian works. And there was a waitress, and I said, I'm vegetarian, and I see you've got some vegetable soup here. Is there any meat stock in the soup? And I could be speaking Pashtun to her. She just had no idea what that meant. So I said, please go and ask the chef if there's any meat in the soup. And if there is, I'll order something else. It's not a problem. She goes in, she comes out, says, chef says there's no meat in all in that soup. He just put in a ham bone for flavor. Welcome to Norfolk. A couple of years later, I was invited to serve on the Civic Leadership Institute, which is a wonderful, do you know what it is? It's a very, very fine program pulling together people from different walks of life and training them to understand what are the issues facing our region. So my subcommittee was supposed to evaluate the strategic plan of the Norfolk Public Library. You remember we built anchor branches and so on and so forth about a dozen years ago. So part of our job was to go to Richmond and speak to the director of the public library there and see how they handle comparable problems. Now, accompanying me was a very fine man who left our region to go to Roanoke, but he was the top editor of the Virginian Pilot, D. Carpenter. Remember him? Very fine man. Big, tall guy. He towered over me, which is important. So we get to the Richmond Public Library, the main branch, the director's office, beautiful conference room, beautiful office, and he says, friends, it's almost the lunch hour. Why don't we get some sandwiches and work through lunch? So I'm the committee chair, which means I have the privilege of buying a sandwich for this guy. So I said, what would you like? He said, I'd like a ham sandwich. D puts his hand on my shoulder and says, now, Rabbi, I know you can't order a ham sandwich. I said, au contraire, mon frère. I can order it. I can't eat it. I said, and I will never have the opportunity in my life to order a ham sandwich with such a good witness as the editor of the newspaper to testify that it wasn't for myself. He said, all right, but I'm going to stick with you just to make sure. So we go down to the corner and I get into this non-kosher, boy was it non-kosher, corner delicatessen, and I'm feeling so proud of myself, and I say to the guy at the deli counter, I'm going to have a ham sandwich. I thought my job was done. But then he says, white bread or rye? Now remember, I'm a New Yorker. White bread is for goyim. I eat rye bread. You don't have to be Jewish to love Levy's. But it's not Levy's white bread, it's rye bread. I'm about to say rye, Dee's hand on my shoulder. White bread. So I said, white bread. And I figure I'm done. Then he says, mustard or mayonnaise? And now I'm getting wise, because every fiber, every taste bud is saying mustard. So I look up at D and I mouth, mayonnaise? And he goes, hand on my shoulder, mayonnaise. So that's the story of my ham sandwich, but what did I eat? What did I eat? Well, I'll tell you a religious story. This is the only midrash I ever created. Think of Genesis chapter 1. God looked at everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. But the story leaves something out. It's the last nanosecond before the sun goes down, before the Sabbath, the primordial Sabbath begins, and God will then rest. And you know, God can do a lot in a hurry. God is thinking, what's missing? What's missing from my beautiful cosmos? What needs to be created? And he looks through the speculum of the future generations, and he sees that many, many eons hence, the Jewish people will be exiled from their land. It'll be so hard for them to get kosher food. And so God created the tuna fish. And that's my story.